Hello guys, hello friends, hello G. So this is going to be on galactose metabolism. Galactose is one of the monosaccharide, and this galactose combined with glucose to form a molecule we call what? Lactose. And this lactose is being found in what? Milk products. So let's say that you've taken in a milk product like this, which contains lactose. When this milk product gets into the what? Into the gut, this lactose in the milk product will be acted upon by a certain enzyme we call lactase, and this lactase will convert the galactose to what? Glucose and what? Galactose. Hope you understand. But there are some people who lacks the enzyme we call lactase, and because they lack the enzyme lactase, they can't break down lactose to glucose and galactose. When such people take in milk products, they normally experience conditions like diarrhea, bloating, and cramps. So put that in mind. And unlike other monosaccharides like fructose, which we get only from what? Plant products and other products, for galactose, it can also be produced by our body through molecules we called glycoproteins and what? Glycolipids, as you can see here. So glycoproteins and what? Glycolipids. Our cells can produce galactose from these things. So galactose can be produced by our body, and we can also get it from extra sources like sugar beets. Let me show you here, like sugar beets, gums, and what? Mucilages. Hope you can see it here. Sugar beets, gums, and what? Mucilages. Put that in mind. So now let's look at the galactose metabolism, the steps involved. First, one thing I will say is that the only way galactose can be metabolized is by converting the galactose to glucose. So in galactose metabolism, our main focus is on how to convert this galactose to what? Glucose. So from this top here, from galactose to this glucose below here, that's our main focus. The first thing that will happen is that this galactose will receive a phosphate molecule from ATP, and this phosphate molecule will be added on the first carbon of this galactose. Thereby we will get galactose 1-phosphate, and the enzyme that will perform that reaction, we call it galactokinase. It is the one converting galactose to what? Galactose 1-phosphate. So put that in mind. After getting the galactose 1-phosphate, another step will happen. But before I talk about this other step, put this molecule in your brain, a molecule we call UDP glucose. UDP means uridyl diphosphate, meaning that this uridyl molecule is having 2 phosphates. Keyword 2 phosphates. And this uridyl diphosphate is being bonded to what? Glucose. Put that in mind. The uridyl is having how many phosphates? 2. So in the second step, this galactose 1-phosphate here, look at this picture here. This galactose 1-phosphate will be converted to this molecule here called UDP galactose. The galactose 1-phosphate is being converted to this molecule here called UDP galactose. And let me explain how this happened. This molecule I made mention of, which is UDP glucose, will lose its uridyl parts and 1-phosphate. Uridyl parts and 1-phosphate. So after losing the uridyl parts and 1-phosphate, it means that it will be left with 1-phosphate and a glucose. And this 1-phosphate and a glucose, initially, looking at this diagram here, the phosphate was being added to the what? To the first carbon of the glucose. But after losing the uridyl part and 1-phosphate, the other phosphate left and the glucose, that phosphate will be shifted to the what? To the 6th carbon. Thereby we will get glucose 6-phosphate. And the enzyme that will do that conversion is called phosphoglucomutase. It is the enzyme shifting the phosphate from the first carbon of this glucose to what? To the 6th carbon of the glucose. Thereby we getting glucose 6-phosphate. And this glucose 6-phosphate can be used in what? glycolysis. Hope you understand. Let's come back. The uridyl part and the 1-phosphate that we removed from the UDP glucose will be added to this galactose 1-phosphate. The galactose is already having a phosphate, and now you are giving the galactose 1-phosphate another phosphate, meaning that it will be diphosphate, and you're also giving this galactose 1-phosphate a uridyl molecule. So this galactose 1-phosphate is going to turn to what? Uridyl diphosphate galactose. Hope you understand. So this is how we get that uridyl diphosphate galactose. And the enzyme performing this reaction, we call that enzyme galactose 1-phosphate uridyl transferase. Put the enzyme in your head. Galactose 1-phosphate uridyl transferase. Now let's look at some conditions that can actually happen when there is deficiency of some of these enzymes. The first one we are looking at is deficiency of the enzyme galactokinase. The enzyme that was converting the galactose to what? Galactose 1-phosphate. When that enzyme is not there, it means that you can't convert the galactose to what? Galactose 1-phosphate. And in such case, this galactose will use another pathway. Say we'll use another pathway. And that pathway that is going to use, we call that pathway galactitol pathway. Galactitol what? Pathway. This galactose, since it cannot be converted to galactose 1-phosphate, it will use another pathway where it will be converted to what? Galactitol or galactitol. So this galactose will be converted to galactitol by an enzyme called aldose reductase. Look at the enzyme here. So the galactose is being converted to galactitol by the enzyme aldose reductase. And normally this galactose, most of them will be moved to the lens of the eye. Let me first make this statement. We are looking at deficiency of galactokinase. What actually happened? The main condition that happens when a person is deficient of galactokinase is cataract. And I'm going to explain the cataract. You see, the high accumulation of this galactose in our blood, since there is no galactokinase, this high accumulation of galactose, most of them will be shifted to the lens of the eye. And in the lens of the eye, there is this enzyme we call aldose reductase. And this aldose reductase is the one that is going to convert galactose to what? Galactitol. But this is the case that in the lens of the eye, the enzyme that is going to convert the galactitol further to glucose, that enzyme is absent. Put that in mind. The enzyme that is going to convert the galactitol to glucose is absent, meaning that when aldose reductase convert the galactose to galactitol, the galactitol is going to end there and it's going to accumulate in the eye. And one thing about galactitol is that it loves water, so it will start drawing water to itself, and that is what is going to lead to the cataract. Hope you understand. Now let's look at another condition called classical galactosemia. Galactosemia. This classical galactosemia can also lead to what? Cataract. It's when you don't have one of the enzymes needed for what? Galactose metabolism. Galactose is going to accumulate in the what? In the blood. And when galactose accumulates in the blood, we call that condition galactosemia. It becomes classical galactosemia. And this is an autosomal condition. Put this in mind. Most of the conditions that happens when there is deficiency of an enzyme is mostly autosomal conditions. And since there is high accumulation of this galactose in the blood, and the blood too will be shoveled into the kidney, it means that some of this galactose is going to be found in our kidney, and that is what we call galactose urea, meaning that galactose in our urine. Hope you understand. Yes, so that is classical galactosemia. So put that in mind. It's when you are deficient. Mostly classical galactosemia happens when you are deficient of the enzyme galactose 1-phosphate uridyl transferase. Galactose 1-phosphate uridyl what? Transferase. This is the enzyme that was converting what? The galactose 1-phosphate what? UDP galactose. So when there is deficient of that enzyme galactose 1-phosphate uridyl transferase, a condition called classical galactosemia will happen, meaning that there is going to be accumulation of galactose in your blood, and some will also be found in the urine, leading to a condition we call galactosuria. Hope you understand. Yes, so that's all for galactose metabolism.